This story happened in October of 2004, back when I was still a third-year high school student. My friends and I stuck around the school late at night after our annual Halloween party. We had agreed to try out my friend's Ouija board. It wasn't the brightest idea, but we needed a thrill. We found a nice spot under a huge tree and proceeded with our ritual. There were 5 of us, 2 boys and 3 girls. We were all expecting some kind of paranormal contact. Rumors had it that our school was haunted, but we've never really experienced anything firsthand. It was Halloween though, and we all wanted to get spooked. Also, we've never seen a Ouija board firsthand, so we were all pretty excited. Our school was an old Spanish colonial house, built in the 1800s when the Spaniards still occupied the Philippines. We were in a section of the school that doesn't get used often, located beside a creepy old Jesuit house. People only go there when they need to use the restroom, store equipment in the sheds, or to make out with their boyfriends or girlfriends. We sat down in the middle of the open space, with only an exposed bare bulb nearby, illuminating the surroundings. We were all having a laugh and scaring each other with what-if scenarios. We were your typical dumb kids doing dumb things. My friend who brought the Ouija board proceeded to place it in the middle of our circle. If I remember correctly, it was the glow-in-the-dark version, which we found hilarious. But it gave us the ability to see what was written in the dark. We didn't know exactly what to do, so we just went by what we'd seen in movies, and it all proceeded to place our index fingers on the top of the planchette. We sat there looking at each other, until one of us said, "What's next?" We didn't know if there was any proper way to start the ritual, plus the board didn't come with instructions, so we decided to just throw in a question. "Is there anyone there?" I called out into the darkness. "If there are spirits living here, please talk to us." One of the girls joined in. We clearly had no idea what we were doing, and nothing happened. Not even the slightest bit of wind. One of my friends jerked the planchette, and the girl who brought the Ouija board screamed, breaking the silence. We all laughed at how ridiculous it was. After a bit of joking around, we decided to give it another go. We all placed our index fingers back on the board, and once more we asked, "Is there anyone there who would like to make contact?" "Don't break the circle," one of my friends jokingly said. "Shut up," I whispered. We were just about ready to give up when the wind started to pick up. The stillness broke, and the darkness around us seemed to move. Just a coincidence, we thought. "Okay, don't break the circle," I yelled. "Is there anyone there?" I was excited. It was like a scene from a movie, with dirt and dead leaves swirling around us. "Guys, I'm scared," my friend sitting beside me said. "My mom warned me about playing with forces that we don't know," she said. We all started throwing random stupid questions out, and nothing happened. "This is nonsense. I don't want to do this anymore," my friend said. We were all thinking the same thing. Just then, a group of dogs from the neighboring house started barking at us through the chain-link fence. These 6 dogs were growling and showing teeth. We all screamed, and without finishing the ritual, we bolted out of there. We didn't see each other until after Halloween break, and this is where the story gets creepy. One of the girls told us about a weird experience she had the night after playing with the board. She had gotten home late after hanging out with friends from the neighborhood, when she realized she'd forgotten her keys to her house. So she called her brother, and what he said really creeped her out. He swore she was already home. He claimed to have seen her walk in a while ago and that she looked really tired, and he saw her head straight to bed. I thought that was kind of creepy, but no reason to freak out over. Besides, her brother must have just been tired and seeing things. But then, my other friend started telling us about an encounter she had that Halloween night. She was going up to her room when the light started flickering as she was ascending the staircase. Your typical horror movie visuals shrugged it off to faulty wiring, but just then, she saw the door to her room open, and a dark figure stepped out and stood atop of their staircase. She couldn't make out the face, but she recounted that she couldn't move and felt utter dread as the figure stared down at her. My best friend didn't believe her, but she insisted it was true. Another of my friends had a creepy story to tell as well. He recalled that he was sleeping one night, and he woke up feeling really uncomfortable. He described his vision as having TV-like static, and feeling heaviness surrounding him. He looked around the room, and that's when he saw a bloody charred face with piercing red eyes grinning at him through the window. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because I had an almost run-in with death that night as well. After the ritual, I was sleeping in our sedan on the way home, after fooling around with the Ouija board, when I felt the car jerk. I woke up instantly. Looking out the window, I found out that we'd hit a large oil tanker. I panicked and leapt out of the car. Luckily, my mom and I survived the crash, but the front of the car was a total wreck. I still don't have an explanation for why those things happened to us, but thank God nothing happened after that. I never played, or got near, a Ouija board ever since. I was 20 years old at the time, and it was the week before the presidential election in the United States. I felt a lot of anxiety about the election, because I live in Manhattan, and there are a lot of crazy people in that city. Many of them act as if the entire world is going to end over a simple election. So, feeling exhausted from both of that, and my university, I decided to visit my friends in Moscow. I'm half Russian, and I have an apartment in the city center of Moscow. I'd never been to Russia when it was snowing, but luckily during this time, it was snowing. The city looked beautiful, and the vibe was perfect. I felt so calm and safe, and the whole world around me seemed so quiet. Unfortunately, I had severe jet lag, and fell asleep at around 5 p.m. My friend went home to get ready for her classes the next day, and I woke up at around 3 a.m. But I couldn't fall back asleep, so I decided to go outside and take a walk around my area, while it calmly snowed. I walked around the dead empty city in my district, and took in all the beautiful architecture. The snow was falling down heavily. I don't remember how long I was walking, but I crossed a bridge and entered into a neighborhood that I was not familiar with. I thought it would be okay, as it was in my district, and sort of remembered the way back home. I eventually came up to the enormous entrance of a block unit with a beautiful gate on it. The gate was open, so I decided to step inside. It looked like a small little compound, or something similar to it. If anyone is from Russia, they probably know what I'm talking about. Everything was dead quiet, and the trees canopied in the square complex. To the right was an extremely tall building, with a ginormous door. I peeked inside, and saw a slightly dimmed lobby. Typical Russian lobby vibe, with a blinking fluorescent light. I held onto the door, and to my surprise it was unlocked. I entered the massive building, and looked around. There was an elevator to the right of the stairwell that led down. The door at the bottom of the stairs was open. I absolutely did not know what came over me, as I'm not one to adventure alone. But as I stated earlier, everything felt so beautiful. The quiet vibe of snow-covered Russia had me feeling so peaceful, and I decided to just tiptoe into the basement to take a closer look. I walked into the room through the open door and turned on the flashlight from my phone. I saw an extremely long tunnel, and I could not see the end of it. I felt threatened by it, and got extremely uncomfortable. I decided it was best for me to leave. When I turned around, the only light that was entering the tunnel was from outside of the doorway. I saw a black silhouette. I quickly understood it was the outline of a person who was at least 5 inches taller than me. I would say he was about 6 feet 5 inches. He was massive, and my stomach dropped so hard, my heart was beating super quickly. He started to speak to me in Russian, but my Russian isn't fluent. I don't understand everything. "I'm sorry, I don't speak Russian," I said to him. "Do you speak English?" he said to me. I told him I did, and then he asked me if I knew where I was. I said that I didn't. As my mind started to fill up with a lot of different scenarios, one of which was me having to run down this tunnel. I'm getting lost to avoid him if he chases me. These tunnels used to be used by the Red Army soldiers to move from one place to another during the war, he explained to me. This whole building was used as a bunker for the Red Army soldiers, he added. I nodded politely to show interest, and began to move towards the left while facing him. I was trying to get him to move away from the doorway. This whole place is now apartments. I have one on the top floor. You should come to see it, he said. It's quite late, and I think I should be going. However, he grabbed my small wrist with a lot of strength and led me towards the stairs to go to the main floor of the lobby. You'll love it, he called the small elevator, and if any of you have ever been to Russia, you'll know exactly what type of elevator it is, the type that can barely fit 2 people. He began telling me about how he just got back from Chicago, and that his husband loved Chicago as well. This started to have me panicking, because I thought to myself that there would be another man up there to where he was bringing me, and I would have 2 men to overpower me. Once we got to his room, I looked at his massive studio apartment. He had only candles to light the room, with a lot of tapestries dividing it up. Both the candle and moonlight shining through created a super eerie vibe. I looked out his window as he instructed me, and I have to admit, the view was amazing. I got a panoramic view of the city, and I then started scoping around, looking for an opportunity to get out of there. Where's your husband? I asked. He looked at me and laughed. Then he said, Oh, he's dead. He then picked me up. I asked him what he was doing. He brought me into another room. He ran his hand down my back and took my phone from my back pocket. I did not realize that he did this. I tried to pull away, but that made him squeeze and corner me even harder. After around 10 minutes of this, he told me to wait a moment. He went into his bathroom, and at this moment, I sprinted over to the door. There were no lights, so I went to pull out my phone for the flashlight, and to my horror, my phone was missing from my back pocket. I did not realize that he did this. I tried to pull away, but that made him squeeze and corner me even harder. After around 10 minutes of this, he told me to wait a moment. He went into his bathroom, and at this moment, I sprinted over to the door. There were no lights, so I went to pull out my phone for the flashlight, and to my horror, my phone was missing from my back pocket. I almost had a heart attack as I realized I would have to go back into the bedroom to get my phone. I darted back into the room and saw my phone lying on the couch that he had next to the bed. I grabbed it and ran for the door. I unlocked the 2 locks on the door, and when that one opened, there was an outer door. I managed to get it open as well. As I ran out, the adrenaline in my body was very high. I ignored the elevator and went straight for the stairs. I ran around in circles down for what seemed like forever, until I finally reached the bottom. I pretty much leapt down the last few steps to get out into the lobby, and then to the main door that I'd entered from. I pushed it as hard as I could, but it wouldn't open. I then started sobbing to myself. The thought of having to go back into that tunnel to hide again from him came over me, and I almost began to accept that as the reality at this point. I quickly tried to pull myself together, and noticed the typical button that you should press to disable the magnet that holds the door locked. I pressed it, and heard the monotone beep that followed, and fell out of the door into the snow. Until then, I never understood why the characters in horror movies could not pull themselves together and run away. But that moment, I did the same, and I sort of understand now. I trudged through the thigh-high snow to the main road by exiting the complex. I sprinted, ignoring my lungs screaming for air. I only slowed when I reached a bridge that led to my street. Once I got inside, I sat on my bed for nearly 2 hours shaking, before I told anyone what happened with me.